the symptoms of a transmission speed sensor going out, you're going to get these two error codes. One is for transmission sensor and one I believe is for idle control sensor. You're going to have a check engine light and your speedometer will not work. So speedometer is not working. This makes the car go into limp mode. So anything over 2,000 RPMs and the car kind of lays over, turns off all the power, and it's very frustrating to drive. It's kind of scary to drive because you don't know if you're going to hurt something. But it's just the car protecting itself, and you need to fix the transmission speed sensor if you're having these symptoms. I did attempt to bring my car into Firestone, which is the closest shop to my house, and have them do this install, and they actually refused after getting into the car, saying they did not want to break off any of the sensor into the transmission and be responsible for a new transmission for me. So that is how I got into this position of changing this on my own. So here we go. So here is the transmission speed sensor. It is on the passenger side of the transmission, underneath the intercooler and right next to the downpipe. I first sprayed the sensor with some WD-40, try to loosen it up, and then I found the only tool that would really fit in this tight space was a small vice grips. And so in order to make sure I had the best chance of taking it out, I actually made the vice grips the size of the new sensor before attempting to pull it out. If you were successful at getting that sensor out without breaking it, then you can just hand screw in the new sensor, use the same vice grips, and once it gets tight, and tighten it down, plug it in, and you should be good to go. Just make sure that that orange seal on the new sensor is buried inside the transmission. Plug it in, unplug the battery to reset the codes, and you should be good to drive after that. Now, if you were like me and when you were trying to take it out, found that the transmission sensor was basically stuck in there from 20 years and broke the sensor, I'm going to go through the way that I was able to successfully remove the broken sensor and all of its pieces, giving you the best chance of getting this sensor in without breaking your transmission. Alright, so to catch you up, I was not able to remove the sensor. It's a couple days later. The car was drivable, so I just drove it into my garage. It was sitting out in front. I was hoping I could get it removed and put back in. So what happened was I tried the vice grip, and the vice grip didn't work. But the vice grip really was the right tool after it was broken. So it eventually broke. It's just plastic, and I was putting as much torque. I was putting a lot of torque on it, so understandable. It's gonna break. After snapping it, I basically got a big magnet and made sure to hold the magnet as it just snapped a little bit, and I held the magnet there and pulled out all the metal pieces as I slowly pulled it apart, and making sure, that all the metal pieces were pulled out, because I figured metal would be the worst thing to get in there. Then I used the crescent wrench and squeezed, tighter and tighter, trying to get that sucker to unthread, but it never happened. And eventually I just had to crack it, and that's what happened. So, cracked, it looked something like this, sitting down in the hole. And this was attached to the plug still, or this came off when I unplugged it. These are all the metal bits that you do not want to lose down the hole. So the way I did that was, as I cracked it, I had this nice little magnet, and I was pulling out each of these pieces as we went along. You can see they're all very magnetic. And this one is a crucial one because this is the one that's down in the hole, and I got that sucker as well. So all these metal bits, you want to make sure do not fall down the hole. I want to get as much plastic out as possible, that's why I have the vacuum, but these little metal ones could really ruin your day, I'm thinking. I should be able to slowly chip through the sidewall. And the way I'm doing it, so I'm basically using this really long, thin screwdriver, wedging it against one side and just lifting up. Pops the plastic out of the hole, which is good. So let's see if I can show what I'm attempting here. So I get it wedged in here, and I'm just trying to basically chew one little hole through the wall. Alright, so I'm continuing to chip away at the sensor using this long screwdriver and just kind of using it as a lever to scrape away the old sensor. When I feel metal, I know it's too deep, or when you feel the ridges of the tap. I'm also frequently stopping to vacuum it out using this, just getting way in there and sucking it all out, getting all those bits and pieces. Most of the stuff lies out the way I'm doing it, but it's really looking chewed up. But it's almost through on one side. As you can see the threads there, and there's one little bit of plastic left, so I'm going to try to get that on the bottom there and try to get that little bit of plastic and see if I can start wiggling that sucker out and continue vacuuming, cleaning, hopefully shove the new one in and it works. We'll see. Alright, so I was making good progress at first with the longer screwdriver, but the maneuverability down in that tight area did not allow for me to do much more after I had one good path up with that screwdriver with good torque on that long screwdriver. And then I switched to a smaller screwdriver, more of a normal flathead, and I was able to just start working another, kind of like cutting a pie wedge out of threads on the plastic. And I got a good chunk here, and most of it is loose. You can see the threads there, might be a little damaged, hopefully it will still work. So I kind of got a pie wedge chunk out and everything is starting to loosen up. And again, I switched to a more normal screwdriver and just moved slightly over, had a little more maneuverability in there. Yep. So using the transmission case as for leverage, just kind of working my way around and cracking as much as I can, and frequent vacuuming. I want to keep that whole sensor hole as clean as possible. My hope in the end is that a new one goes in and I don't need a transmission rebuild. Alright, let's keep going. I'm about to vacuum this again because there's a giant hunk. You can see it's all coming, the dominoes have fallen. So I think the key to this one is tons of patience and just slowly chipping away at plastic and realizing you do not want to dent those threads so much that you won't be able to screw the new one on. So just gentle scraping out the plastic with the screwdriver and frequent vacuuming up any of the plastic bits that have fallen in. And there's the last little bit. I'm going to do one more good vacuum job. Looks a little chewed up, but I'm hoping the new one will fit in there and it'll work and I save myself some money. We'll see. Alright, it is out. there's the sensor cord. There is the hole, a little chewed up. I'm hoping that the threads are okay. I'm hoping everything goes in smooth. I just want to do a quick overview of the tools and whatnot that I used. So I did use my wife's vacuum because it has a nice little thin vacuum tube. I do have a shop vac, but I figured this nice thin one could really, get in and work it around and make sure that it was clean as I can get it. I'll probably do one more suction before I go in. So after it was out, all I had was this thing sitting down in the hole. And the way I attacked this was, first was this long screwdriver. And basically what I did was I kind of wedged it in and started cutting it with leverage I could get. I had to be careful because I did start to see a metal flake or two when I was hitting the threads. You want to stay far away from them. Just take your time, do it slow, make sure you're chewing plastic. Chew, 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 chew. And then, after I was sure it was all the way through, obviously it wasn't completely because there's still that little bit, but I got most of the thread. I used the second size here because down in that hole, in order to get a little more angle, I could get a better angle with this one. This one gave me more leverage to start. This one gave me a better angle for the second pie cut. And then at points, just taking my time, slowly chewing this thing up, I did use the tiny, tiny screwdriver, the shorty, and just chopped the bits out until I actually pulled this out with my hands after I saw it was loose. So while I have the sensor out, I got a fresh hole to put in the new sensor into. I want to test the new sensor, make sure it's working. I've had her a few days, banged around a little bit. I also want to make sure the cords are all working, because the last thing I want to do is tighten this new one down and then find out it's the harness. So I want to make sure everything is working. In order to do that, I will show you the steps in the next part of this video. Alright, so in order to test the new sensor, I'm using this old sensor piece as a measurement, and what I found was 7mm. Got a 7mm drive, and it's the only one that seems to work. Fits this sensor piece. That is the external part of this sensor. So I'm going to use a ratchet drive, a bit conversion to the ratchet drive, make it smaller, and a 7. And basically I'm going to plug it in, plug this in, and run this and see if miles per hour shows up on the dashboard. Yikes. I don't want, one thing that did happen, as you can see I'm banging this thing around, was when I was playing with that magnet, I did pull that piece out, so I'm hoping I didn't ruin the sensor. So I did pull this bit out of that, and I just shoved it back in. I'm hoping that's okay, but let's test the sensor, make sure that's working first off. I don't know how I'm going to do it because the cord's not long enough, so I think I'm going to set up this camera and record if it worked or not. Alright, so I've got the ratchet drive ready to go. I have the sensor just hanging from the air conditioning line. I'm just going to try this by turning the key into the on position without the engine on. And I'm going to record it because there's no way I can see the dash from here. So I'm just going to connect to that and see if it reads anything. Right in the on position. Let's see how she does. So, on position did not work. I'm now going to try starting the car and see how that works. See if it'll work then. And I'll also try both directions because I just did one direction. Maybe it doesn't show revert. I don't know. We'll see. After checking the video, it works, so I'm going to unplug it, screw it back in, hopefully it fits. I'm going to do one more vacuum job on that hole as well. Plug it back in. So vacuum, screw the sensor in, plug the sensor in, and hopefully I'm also going to disconnect the battery and reconnect it to clear the codes. And hopefully we're back in business. All right, let's see. I do want to mention that this little bit here, this little piece of the sensor likes to fall out a lot. So this is the third time it's fallen out for me. I am just going to clean it very carefully, pull all the gunk off, put it back in the case. Just slide it back in because it fell out about 3 times before I tested it and it was successful. So I'm assuming that will be okay. All right. Okay, so on the sensor install, tried a variety of tools, and once again this mini vice grip is coming in handy if you don't want to be taking the downpipe off. And I know I'm biting up the plastic a little bit, but without taking off the downpipe, I think it's got to be done. It's pretty snug there. The orange little gasket thing just disappeared, so I'm thinking that'll be good. Had like a little orange gasket I could see, and I just sunk it in. Now I'm gonna re-clip up the cord. New sensor in. Just to make sure the codes don't mess stuff up, I'm gonna unplug the battery as well for a little bit. Alright, moment of truth. Just resetting the battery right now, charging the battery, and pulled off the power, so we should be getting complete computer reset. So I'm gonna throw that sucker back on and go for the test drive, see if the speedometer works. Moment of truth. Alright, we got a reset on the radio, that's good. Reverse works. So far so good. first. Speedometer working. See if the codes come back. Well, I just went out on the freeway and it did okay. A little jumpy at first. Let's see if it does it now when I take off. It might just be, you know, bits of plastic that are breaking apart inside the transmission or inside that little sensor bay. Oh, it's running nice and smooth. No lights. Looking good. Yeah, so I hit about 80 miles an hour and had no issues. No lights coming on. Transmission feels alright. Besides, when it was cold, it didn't want to go into first. So I don't know what that is, but there, it's bouncing around again. This is kind of what my other one did, so I'm wondering, the other transmission, the other sensor, all that stuff, when I would get on it a little bit, it would be bouncy. So I don't know if it's a product of the wiring or the computer or what, but it's still a little bouncy.